Good morning, Melissa.
Good morning, Phyllis. How are you?
I'm Peachy. How you doing today?
All right. Can't complain.
Good, good, good. You wouldn't believe the lines at the library this morning.
Oh, I can imagine. I think John Gallen had mentioned that he typically goes at 7 o'clock. So he said, depending on the lines, he may or may not be late to the meeting today.
I'm guessing on May.
Okay.
Maybe late. Just you and me. This won't take long.
I know, right?
Approved. No more work.
Yeah, we're good. Go for it.
Boy, this is unusual.
Good morning.
Good morning, Steve.
Steve.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Bill.
Bill.
I know this is early for you, Bill.
It is. Was that you just whistling?
Yes, it was.
No, you're too early to be happy. So, John, I was saddened to see on the news this morning that, what was it, the Old City Tavern closed after 30 some years in Philly.
Never been.
That's a pretty cool place.
You know, before we get started here, I went to vote, and being the smart guy that I am, I thought, everybody's sending their ballots by mail. The cars were lined up to, you know, all the way on both sides of the boulevard to Stephanie Rawdon's house, 1001 Reading Boulevard, and the line was lengthy. But I'm an old guy. I want to go vote.
I'm looking out my window at the library now, and the line is still wrapped around the building and very lengthy.
Wow.
Yeah.
We dropped ours off at the county services building the other day. and walked right in, walked right out. No problem.
We did the same thing.
Hey, Michelle, that was a great video that Eck was put together.
Morning.
Morning, Keith.
Just saw a picture. Fran Post just took a picture from standing in line over at the library. There's got to be 100 people in front of him. They're wrapped around the sidewalk.
Wow.
Yeah, I wanted to go there and do it before this meeting, but
That
guess
didn't
it's
work
gonna
out
have to
so well.
wait.
I'm glad I chose to get mine and I dropped it off. Tyra and I dropped ours off last week out at the Ag Center just for not wanting to stand in line.
Well, I have my ballot, and if it continues to be that way, I'll just put it in the mailbox, which
Take it
I
out to
really
the
trust.
take it out to the Ag Center. It's real easy. You park right there. You walk in. There's a guy standing there to make sure you only have one, and you drop it in the box.
maybe I'll do that.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay,
Steve,
everyone,
you're good.
I guess we got the meeting started. Melissa, you want to take roll call?
Keith Durr,
Here.
Tom Mole,
Here.
John Gallen indicated he may be a little bit late this morning. Steve Brunner
Here.
and Greg Portner. And I don't see him on the call.
Okay. At this time, and is there any public comment? Okay, that being said, for those, if there is anybody joining us for public for the viewing, now is the time to speak. We will not be taking public comments during the meeting. So that
hello.
being
I just
heard,
signed on. I'm sorry, I'm late.
okay.
Rick Weinhofer. I just wanted to say thank you very much for all of the efforts that you guys put forward. I did watch the last meeting. I appreciate them being available for review. I'm not sure what this is going to look like. I've never gone through the budget process before, but just based on everything that's happening currently with our economic situation, we've had job losses in my household. We would appreciate everything that we can do to keep our taxes where they are at this point in time without an increase this year.
Okay. Any other public
Thank you very
comment?
much.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Phyllis, you're up.
All right. Several changes have been made to both the proposal and the projection. Most notably for the projection, the 3 pending grant reimbursements have been added. We've heard already that the CARES Act reimbursement has been approved in full. We're still working on the material detail for the alley grant. And the DCED, I was hoping Michelle could give us an update. I'm not sure that she's in on this call or not. Michelle, are you here? No. Well, the revenue that's anticipated from those 3 items.
Phyllis, I'm here. I don't have an update on that yet.
Okay, all right. The full 303 has been added to revenue, bringing the year-end projection to $786,000. I also tweaked a few lines just to reflect October activity, new information that may have been learned. When that surplus is added to the beginning fund balance, we bring our ending fund balance to $9,088,000. Melissa, can you roll forward? There we go.
Phyllis, you're making the assumption that all of those grants have been received in 2020.
That was our previous discussion, yes.
Okay.
Okay. In the event the DCED grant is received, The portion that is reimbursable to Equus has been added to the reserves. All the changes I've made to the original draft are highlighted in green as we go through these pages. You can see in addition to the Equus reimbursement for 254, the MS4 reserve has likewise been adjusted. None of us could substantiate the 277 that we previously discussed. The 240 would represent 3 years of an $80,000 commitment. And that would be for the Wyomissing Creek Coalition. So with reserves totaling 1.3 from the overall fund balance of 9,088,000, we're left with an unreserved fund balance of 7,786,000, which includes a positive general fund unreserved balance of 847,000. Any questions on where we project to end the year?
Where again were we with, because we didn't have any reserve funds at the end at 12/21 of 19? Just remind me again, where were we in total fund balance at the end of 19?
We started 2020 with a fund balance of 8,320,000.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
And we projected a loss of 1.08 million, correct?
We budgeted, yes.
Okay.
That was the budget.
Just to keep myself on board. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All
See
right.
how hard that is, Steve? Year after year, we keep doing the same thing, even when we try not to.
What's that?
We keep trying to use the fund balance and we don't.
Well, that's a good thing, but I get what you're getting at.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right. Can you roll forward, Melissa? All right. So additional changes that have been made to the proposed budget. Anticipated grant revenues have also been added to 2021 that were not in the original draft one. I've added the amount for the Berkshire Heights playground renovations. I believe that award will occur in January of 2021. We've also added revenue for potential funding for the library roof and air conditioner. And I believe those applications open in January 2021. Michelle, can you correct me there or confirm?
Those are anticipated award and opening dates for the playground and for the library, but like everything else, that's potentially subject to change.
Okay. In addition to the grant revenue, other revenue has been added for a proposed $0.25 increase for taxes and a 3% increase for both water and sewer. Just before signing into this meeting, we confirmed that the water increase that we will incur from the Western Berks Water Authority is 3%. However, the JMA rate will remain unchanged for 2021. I have not yet done anything to the overhead transfers. I have that at the end of the slides for discussion to see if we want to change those amounts for 2021.
Phyllis, excuse me, but that $0.25, what percent did we say that would be?
Well, that's actually the next part here.
Okay, all right.
All right. So with the additional revenues I just discussed and cutting $926,000 from the capital projects, we bring our proposed deficit for 2021 on draft 2 to $1,992,000. You roll forward, Melissa. Okay, these are the capital projects, and we'll review all the detail of what's been cut. Can you go one more slide? Okay, so if we start with a proposed deficit of $1,992,000, and we back out all the capital projects that we'll discuss in a few minutes, the operating results is a small surplus of $559,000. You can see the general fund is now positive, as is the water and the sewer fund. The refuse fund continues to throw a small deficit. Those revenues are fixed. The state funding is in jeopardy, and the contract costs continue to escalate. There is a fund balance, but currently for 2021, a deficit is projected. Likewise with the highway fund, the liquid fuels tax collected this year because travel was down. We anticipated that estimate from PennDOT to be down, and it was indeed down. Together, all funds, a small operating surplus of 559,000. Okay.
So in other words, what we're saying, Phil, is if we did absolutely no capital projects, we'd have a surplus in the budget of 559.
Correct.
Got it.
That's for the tax increase, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if we'll roll forward, we'll look at some of those revenue changes. Oh, here, this is how that surplus would affect the budget or the fund balance. So if we ended the year with a fund balance of $9,088,000 and we posted that entire deficit of $1,992,000, the overall ending fund balance would be $7,095,000. When we deduct from that amount the items that we reserve for, those reserves total 1.6 million. Excuse me. Yeah, 1.6. That would leave us with an unreserved fund balance in total of 6,145,000. What's concerning in this picture is that the general fund is at a negative fund balance and would be supported by the utility funds. Not a good situation to be in. Okay. Any questions on the fund balance and the reserves? All right, we roll forward. I've updated the general fund revenue, which is concerning if we have a deficit in the general fund. Draft 1 and draft 2 are reflected. The only change is a $0.25 real estate tax increase. You can see the percentages do not shift significantly with the real estate tax increase. Those are still the primary sources of revenue for the general fund. All right, you can move one more. All right, this is the effect of the $0.25 real estate tax increase. That would bring the rate from 4.25 to 4.5. It would represent a 5.88% increase and generate an additional potential $255. We don't always collect the full amount. So actually adding the real estate tax millage increased revenue by $247,000. So is there any comment or discussion about leaving that at $0.25? Take it down, take it up? Where would you like to go with that?
My personal opinion is we keep it at that number for now, at least.
I would agree to that.
Phyllis or Chris maybe might know is it typical for a municipality to have a negative fund balance in the general and being supported by utilities, or is that unusual?
That would not be the best practice.
But
we haven't been there for at least 15 years.
Again, John?
We have never experienced that in the 14 years that I've been involved. We've never seen anything like that.
A lot of municipalities do use utility charges to supplement their general fund balances. So, I mean, I agree with Phyllis that it's not the best practice, but many municipalities do it because it gives them the ability to tap into non-real estate property owners as a source of revenue.
All right. The next slides will show you.
I agree with that comment. We have been doing that for as long as since before I was involved, and we increased those utility overhead transfers.
Next slide.
You're right, for years.
There we go.
Having a negative fund balance and supporting it with utilities, I mean, we're running a risk here of we shouldn't be running a negative fund balance in the general fund.
Currently, the 1,125,000 represents about 9% of the general fund revenue.
think if we're taking price increases and we're not getting passed along price increases, especially on the sewer, I think we should definitely increase this transfer. I mean, that looks like it should be done since costs go up on an annual basis. That looks like it should automatically be we should escalate that number annually.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Does anyone have any suggestions on the actual amounts for 2021?
We want to increase it by 5%.
At 1 point, well, we're around $1 million, 1.125. That's about 1.2 mils is what it equates to. If you equated it to our real estate appraised value.
Taking it up to 1180 would be a 5% increase.
I'm sorry, say it again, Keith.
1180 would be a 5% increase. Seems reasonable.
Yeah, I don't know that it's enough.
All right.
Yeah, 5% would just be an additional $56,000.
Yeah, it's not enough.
Take it to $1.2 million. I mean, what can it support? I mean, what are we looking at? What can it support?
Well, actually, what we used to do, I think, is look at the actual fund balances in each of those categories.
Can you roll backwards,
You can see
Melissa?
they're all round numbers. Everything was just done. Oh, let's add another $50,000.
And further to the fund balance page? One more? Okay, you can see the ending fund balances with the 2021 activity. The water fund would have a fund balance of 2.3 million, sewer 3.6, refuse 780, and that will continue to erode.
So take the overhead from the first two.
Yeah.
And
I have a question. When we fund capital projects for water and sewer, do they come out of this pot?
They come out of the respective funds.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that.
all right. When we were at 1.125 million before.
Correct. Melissa, can you scroll down to the bottom one again? There we go.
So, Phyllis, back to the other slide then. Aren't there other projects in the capital budget then for water and sewer beyond what's listed here as the proposed?
Can you back up, Melissa?
Yeah, this one. Like it says 210,000 for sewer.
Those are just the reserves. That's
Okay,
that's a
just the
deficit for the
reserve.
year. That's a
Okay.
deficit for the year with
Okay.
the capital projects in there. But if we look at the actual capital projects, can you scroll backwards, Melissa? One more, there we go.
Steve and group, is there any additional cutting before you make your decisions on your other items for fund balance and so forth? Are there any other issues you want to look at there on capital before going that further? I mean, the one thing that I've looked at and I didn't make cuts because of infrastructure, I think we definitely need to continue with our sewer water infrastructure projects. However, and Jim Babb, don't shoot me, but you have $916,000 worth of street reconstruction. Is that the time to delay that? Just for your discussion.
And Jim, what, again, the streets that we were doing was what, Reading Boulevard from somewhere to somewhere, right?
Reading Boulevard from Cambridge Avenue to Squire, Hill Avenue from Park to West Reading to 8th Street, and Cherrywood Road over in Greenwood Mall, but that one is coming out of the water fund because it's kind of finishing up a water project from a few years ago. Those are the 3 streets.
And the
Great.
sidewalk program.
Pat, to your question, I mean, what do we really need? I mean, if you look at these
Correct.
projects, you know, case in point, I still kick myself in the butt for this, but 2 years ago when we put that strip down the middle of Wellington, I thought that was a complete waste of taxpayer money. Looks nice, great, yeah, but it's not necessary. Are there things in there that aren't necessary, that someone won't be killed if we don't do it or injured? You know, Phyllis, the 630 on that, the Borough Hall.
Borough Hall has been
Pardon?
removed from
Okay.
2021.
All right, so what did we spend on the Borough Hall the last 2 years? Approximately, just ballpark.
$500,000,
All right, so this is finishing it up, I assume,
correct.
because it was, 1.2 million we're spending on a Borough Hall. That's not worth 1.2 million. I mean, so this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. We need to be smarter. We need, you know, if you ran a business like this, you'd be bankrupt. So what do we need? What don't we need? I know everyone will say we need this stuff. I'm struggling with, or we just increase taxes 10% every year and everybody will be happy except the taxpayers. You know, so I don't know. Sorry, guys and ladies, but I just threw that out. Pat, you asked us. I'm kind of asking you. You know, I don't have an answer to your question. What do I want to see come out of here? I don't know. We really have to go with what you guys are suggesting. And again, you can't just kick the can down the road, though. This is going to come back up in our face sooner or later. I don't know. I just get frustrated.
So Pat, I'm looking at the police cars here. It looks like you have, what are we going to be buying?
We basically cut that down to only replacing the damaged car.
Okay.
And we're only replacing a Tahoe. One of the current supervisor vehicle will be replaced. The supervisor's vehicle will be put down into that. We don't need to buy the second Tahoe at this point in time. The vehicle is being replaced. It's very high mileage and has had an engine replaced, so it's on its last leg for that point. We did cut back on the camera systems. Removed the fitness and day room equipment from the fire stations. Took out the tractor mower that we discussed. Took out the pool cover. We pushed back the borough-wide camera system. We pushed back the treehouse garage doors. We pushed back the borough hall renovations. The police department, the only camera that we are purchasing for the police department is the one that would have been with the system that Mr. Wolf donated to the borough. And that's about an $8,000 unit, which is safety related because it takes camera pictures from the front of the police vehicle, not from the side of the police vehicle. So it helps the officer for officer safety. The light bar were kind of, it's about a $3,000 piece of equipment. And that's because the police car styles change. So the light bar industry changes and we get stuck. So I feel pretty good about the police car, Steve. But, once again, that would be about I don't exactly have the exact number of what each individual police unit was. But Phyllis, you remember what one police vehicle is? Let's see here.
The Tahoe is 52,000.
Right. Yeah, 52,408 is, which was originally, we reduced that from 104.8 to 52.8, 52.4. And to be honest with you, Steve, as far as the street reconstruction projects, I kind of would have to defer to Jim. I respect his expertise on that. I just see that it's a high ticket item. And if there's any streets that we could push back for a year and not get, into an infrastructure nightmare, I do think we need to continue our utility projects as far as water and sewer, because those are things we can't see on the ground.
And Jim, of that roads project, how much of that number is Reading Boulevard roughly?
I'd say at least half. At least half.
So there's a big ticket item. You know, the other thing we talked about, and I know we're putting the $630,000 of Borough Hall into reserves, is we took, without using anything on a line of credit, we have that line of credit available. Does it make sense to, at some point, when we get that process done, to use the line of credit and then maybe reserve 150,000 a year for over the course of 4 or 5 years?
Steve, I did confirm the line of credit is a 2-year line of credit. And Pete indicated that there would be no problems with extending it.
And it's just a way of funding it in a different manner. Phyllis, what was our projected overall balance supposed to be at the end of this calendar year when we did this process last year?
Can you back up, Melissa? Keep going. I want to go to the fund balance page. All right, so we, let's see, we started the year with 8.3, and we thought we were going to have a loss of 1,080,000. So 7.2.
7.2, and then we go back to this year, we're projecting it to be, if we take this entire 199, to be what again? Too many papers on my hands here.
All right, with all the capital projects in there, we would end the year with a fund balance of $7,095,000.
And that $7,095,000, is that inclusive of the reserves?
That's total fund balance.
Okay. Right.
If I deduct the reserves, the unreserved fund balance is $6,145,000.
Okay. All right. Does anybody see anything else that they want to cut from this budget? I'm not opposed to setting back Reading Boulevard another year. I drive it every day. It's not great, but it's not the worst thing in the world either.
Hill Avenue isn't either, Steve. You know, Hill Avenue's been repaved in the last 10 years.
And Tom Mall would remember that in 2009, when we were faced with this and declining revenue, we did postpone. I think at that point in time, Jim Babb, we were doing 3 to 4 road projects a year, improvements, and we cut 2 of them, if I recall, a couple years, 2009 and 10, as a way of.
Well, in the past, up till last year, I would say our average expenditure on road projects was $1.3 million, $1.4 million. Now, a lot of that was when we were doing the Reading and Wyomissing Boulevard reconstruction phases, which is now done. But this would be any cuts here. We have a 5-year plan that has 20 streets on it, and Tom, with all due respect, Hill Avenue, if you go walk that sidewalk and look at that road, it is not good. Same with Cherrywood. If I were to cut one, it would be Reading Boulevard.
I drove just yesterday. I drove all those just to see what they look like in my mind, and yeah. I would agree that the one that needs the least amount of work is Reading Boulevard.
Yeah. Well, Hill Avenue gets more traffic than Reading Boulevard by a long shot.
Why don't we take? Does anybody have a problem taking out Reading Boulevard?
No.
Anybody?
Since I'm new to this budgeting process, can you take it out and look at our finances in March or April and see if anything's changed and make a decision then? Is there anything preventing you from doing extra projects after the budget's approved, if council approves them?
It's just a timing thing to get the gears rolling again. You know, just like with this sewer project this year, we came back and revisited it August, September, and that work is not going to get done until January.
Jim, when would you do the repaving?
Well, the bid opening is in December. We've
Right.
already put it out to bid. And the work would get done May, June, July.
And our biggest revenue month is what, April?
April, May.
So it'd be hard to know where we stand by that point.
I was talking more about just the general economy.
Yeah.
Depending on what happens today, depends what happens with COVID in the next 60 days. I think the next 60 days with all the things that are happening might give us a better picture of what we might be looking at in 2021 is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with Keith. The real estate tax revenue is fairly predictable. The only hiccup this year was the delayed flat period.
Right.
But we still wound up collecting everything that we anticipated we would collect.
Well, and Phyllis, correct me if I'm wrong, but Keith, to your point, I mean, if something comes out of the budget and the budget moves forward January 1st in whatever is approved, if something comes up later in the year and you want to spend some money on something, it can come back to finance, back to council, and they can approve an expenditure that's not in the budget, that wasn't in the approved budget. Phyllis, is that correct?
We've done that with, for example, with the fire truck.
Right. So Keith, it is possible to even, spend some money later in the year once the budget's in place, if need be. There is a method for that.
Well, I think we still need to pare down. So
Well, sure.
my opinion is at this point, take Reading
I'm just
Boulevard off
responding
the
to your
list and
comment.
maybe we can get a portion of it done. That maybe not all the way from Cambridge to Squire, but maybe we can get it from Cambridge down to whatever that circle's called or something along those lines.
Coolidge.
Coolidge Circle, yeah, that one.
I don't know if this is helpful, but I do recall that during that recessionary period that John was speaking about a few minutes ago, we did get some tremendous bargains on public works projects because the contractors were eager for the work. And so, I don't know if that's helpful or not, but I would anticipate that pricing is going to be good next year if everyone else is doing the same kind of scrutiny that you're doing.
All right. So I'm willing to put on the table to remove Reading Boulevard from the construction for 2021, if anybody else is.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
And Jim, I get we had a 5-year plan, but in that 5-year plan, we didn't predict this. So
Yeah. World isn't going to end because we don't do these street projects, but it is pushing the can down the road. That's the obstacle, 4 or 5 years from now.
yeah.
When we have to play catch up, but I get it.
Well, I would agree though, but if we do end up having funding, maybe there's something we can do once we have enough, depending on where we stand in May, somewhere in that range. So,
Yeah.
and then let me ask you this about the $630,000. Does it make sense to keep that in as a reserve number, the entire amount, or do we want to use the line of credit for that ability? And maybe only reserve $150,000 a year for the next 4 years. Yeah, well, I shouldn't say that. Maybe it's $150,000 this year, and then we get the project done next year, and we'd have the $150,000 reserved, and then just use the line of credit for the balance, and then pay that off as fast as we possibly can.
Did we get a conversation with Dolan at all? Has there been a conversation?
I believe, Chris, you can correct me if the way I read that email is they just agreed to a 2 or 3% labor increase.
Yeah, it seems to me that they're going to be cooperative. We don't have an agreement with them. We haven't asked them specifically to enter into an agreement with them. But yeah, they said they were anticipating a 2 to 3% labor increase per year. And at this point, if we go to 2022, we will have pushed it off 2 years. So it'll be 2 to 3% times 2.
Understood.
Pat's concern, though, was also having them come in, depending on what the timing is, was concerned with having them come into Borough Hall as well.
Yeah.
Well, that was part of the questions that we asked Cowder and Dolan to consider. And it seems that there's no way for them to effectively break the project down and do exclusively exterior work. So I don't think it's an option to have them piecemeal the work and come into Borough Hall or do any piece of the work and not come into Borough Hall, I should say. So I think we have to defer the whole project.
Yeah, that will not,
or do it.
that will not work with trying to piecemeal that project. Just absolutely will not work.
All right. So then the question is, for this year, do we pare down that $630,000 reserve and make it, I don't know, pick a number. I just used $150,000. And then with the intent that if we do move forward with this in 2021, we use the line of credit, or we budgeted to balance that balance into next year.
You can do that. That makes sense.
Probably makes sense to do that. I mean, it's not the reserve's not being spent, so it's just sitting there. It's not doing anything other than not being
Right. I understand it's not really affecting the budget this year, but
right.
You know, it's taking some budgetary precautions that we're putting money aside for it because we know it's a future expense, even if it's just in the reserves, and then we can take the difference in the balance. Now, I know that's not going to ultimately affect the bottom line on this budget, but it'll, if nothing else, it's at least utilize that line of credit if we went out and got it for those kind of things. So maybe that's something we do. And if we take out Reading Boulevard and we're talking about $916,000, and Jim, you're thinking that's about 450,000 of it. Is that a fair number? Somewhere in that range?
Fair, yeah.
Listen, for all we got going over at Hill Avenue, I think probably it makes sense to continue with that work over at Hill Avenue. And Cherrywood is not a very well-traveled road. A highly traveled road, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is something that's been in the budget for a while, and I think those people deserve to get that project done.
Steve?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am.
Jim pointed out that the reserves do not include anything for the Public Works facility.
Well, I believe that would all end up being something that if we have to go through the Public Works facility, we'd be borrowing money for that anyway, potentially. I mean, we can set money aside because ultimately it's not really affecting the budget. It'll make it look, that number look worse when you say less, you know, when your reserves your ending budget, your ending balance minus reserves, but
Right.
doesn't make us turn around and use that money for that either.
Correct. But do we want to add something to the reserve just to get it on the radar?
What do we think that project would be net of funding?
I thought it was a $4 million project with potential half funding. Jim, can you correct me on those numbers?
Yeah, I'm not prepared. Yeah, the numbers that are coming into my head are the total project was, I think, 3.4, 3.6, and the funding was 1.8. That's what's coming into my mind.
So yeah, so roughly half.
Well, do we want to set some reserve money away for that? Or is that something that we would probably just go talk to a bank about and go the opposite way?
And Jim, is there engineering that will occur in 2021?
we have a sketch plan now, basically a footprint and some basic engineering, but if we move forward, there would be some architecture costs, yes. I don't know how much they are.
That is not something that's included in the current proposal.
Don't believe so.
Nope.
And can we get a number on that?
Yeah.
Isn't the architectural fee about 10% of the cost?
I don't know.
Well, if you'd set aside, I think if you get the grant for the 1.8 million, I would consider just going to the bank and borrowing the funds to finish the project if we can get it. If we can get 1.8, do it that way.
I would agree. Based on what we're seeing here, I don't see how you can take it out of the account.
No. We're running too tight now.
Steve, was there a conclusion on the reserve for Borough Hall renovations? Was 150 the number?
It was my number, but I'm only one vote. I haven't heard anything else from anybody else.
That sounds like a good idea if we want to do it that way.
Okay.
Or just defer the whole thing and use the reserves when we can. If we see our way clear to do it. Keep our money fluid and do some stuff that really needs to get done.
I would have no problem reducing the number to 150.
All right. So, are all in agreement? We okay with that?
Okay.
Run with it, Phils.
Will do.
How about Reading Boulevard? Listen, it's probably one of the highest traveled roads, non-business road in the borough, but it's also a $450,000 expense.
Cut it.
Okay. Everybody else in agreement? Hearing no dissents, let's cut the Reading Boulevard piece out, Jim. Sorry. All right. Do we see anything else that we want to try to chop? The library repairs, I'm not opposed to doing the library repairs. Just want to see what we're expecting. Funding of $100,000 and expense of $200,000. Is that a fair statement on that one line?
Correct. As well as the air conditioning. That's an application that will open in 2021. So we haven't even applied for that yet. So those types of things we can say, if we get the funding, then we can proceed.
All right. So if we take Reading Boulevard out, that's 450. And if we look at those budgets up there, that if we're not getting the funding, we won't have the negative balance. I know we got to put the whole thing in the budget. I'm just trying to get a feel for that. So it's 15,115 and another 40. So what did I just say? $155,000.
Correct.
I thought we said we were going to do the air conditioning regardless of the funding, but wait on the roof.
Yeah, you're right.
Exactly.
You're right.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry.
So Phyllis, it would seem like we need to put the whole 30,000 over into the net with not knowing whether we're going to get the funding or not.
I can do that.
Because that sounds like we're going to move forward with it regardless of the funding, so that I take the funding out of the 15 and just move the 30 into the net. And if we get the funding, great.
Okay.
Did the heating system repairs take place, Jim?
They just finished up last week.
Okay.
Yes.
Did they give you some kind of an idea what condition the heating system's in?
Well, the issue we were having last year was the burner would intermittently just shut itself off. And sometimes we could get it reset, sometimes we couldn't. So the work that was done was just attaching a new burner to the existing boiler.
Okay.
And so good, it's only been a day or two.
Yeah.
So I have no immediate concerns over there with that.
Okay.
But Mike Cowder did his review of that building. Doing more than that was part of his scope. This
Yeah,
is just
exactly. Well,
one portion.
we were just trying to buy some time on that anyway. I was just curious whether the work got accomplished. I know we set the money aside.
Okay, so we're gonna add 30,000 add $15,000 to that because I agree, we gotta get that done. We don't want that to go.
What I'll do is remove the 15 of funding.
Right.
Okay.
And then we'll reduce the street reconstruction from 916.5 to somewhere in the 450-ish range, I would assume. Okay. So the bottom line is now we have that taken into effect. The projects, and again, remind me of the multimodal drainage projects, Jim. Not saying I don't want to do them, but we're expecting funding of 633,264, correct?
We already have that funding, Steve. We have a
already have
letter
the
of
funding.
commitment
All right,
from
good.
PennDOT.
Okay. We have the funding or we have the approval for the funding?
We have the approval for the funding.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Is the grant for the library for the air conditioning and roof one grant, or is it two separate ones?
It's one grant.
Then we could put the 15,000 added to the 100 to make the net of the reserves, because if we don't get it, we're not going to do the roof, and that would just go towards the roof, which would offset the 30,000 that we're going to spend for air conditioning.
I'm sorry, Michelle, you said that $115,000 potential grant is all one thing. It's not two different grants.
Correct.
Okay, well, I would agree then. That does make sense. So we're just going to make it look different, but it's going to be the total of the 115,000 of capital funding.
Yeah, it's not going to add to the 30,000 won't add to it.
All right, so that's cosmetic, but real. Got it. Okay.
So I'm going to move the 15,000 from the AC line to the roof line.
Right.
Yep.
For the funding.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything? I guess we're meeting again on Thursday, right?
Correct. I have October results. We have some pension business, and I have the valuation from the other post-retirement benefits to report. There's nothing timely about that. That can wait if you'd like it to. That's the Mock and Hop report.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to still be dealing with the budget a little bit on Thursday.
Okay.
So now we're talking about if we take out, if basically in essence, what we're removing here is roughly $450,000 for the road. Correct? That's all we've done?
Everything else is in the reserves.
Yep, everything else is in the reserves. Okay, so that would take our projected loss from 1.992 to roughly
1.5.
1.5, somewhere near 1.55. Okay.
Did we end up deciding what we're going to take to increase the transfer rate?
Oh, yeah, I don't think we did do that. And we're at 1.100. What were we at this year?
1125.
Melissa, can you scroll to the very bottom again? There we go.
I apologize for interrupting your thoughts on that. I'm sorry.
On the increase at $100,000.
I think I took it to this Bruce.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Is 100,000 a good number for now?
Yeah, that works.
Do you have a feeling of a split between water and sewer?
About 65,
Have
35.
larger surplus.
Okay, I'll split the 100,000 and be watchful of the current year projection and fund balance.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna add 100,000. We're gonna subtract 450.
That's,
Okay.
the 100,000 doesn't change the bottom line.
No, I know. I get it.
Okay. It just helps the general fund balance.
Okay. Any other questions? So at this point, we're going to be, if we ended it today, we'd be somewhere in the range of ordering a deficit of $1.5 million. Compared to last year, which was 1.08 or 1.08 million. And we're going to end up ahead of the game this year. So, okay. Any other questions out there?
Well, so in other words, if you take the 450 out, we're about $500,000 or $600,000. The fund balance would be $500,000 or $600,000 less than where it was projected to be at the end of last year.
Right.
All right.
That's the way I'm looking at it. Okay. Anybody else?
Nope.
All right, Phil. So you'll take care of that. Can you send that out to us later today or tomorrow sometime?
I will do my best.
Okay. Thank you. And is everybody good for Thursday's meeting? It's also at 8 o'clock.
Yep.
All right. If anybody has any other ideas you didn't want to do, well, I guess we got to do it publicly. So bring it forth on Thursday.
And are we deferring our discussion about the mock and hop evaluation? Or should I have that ready as well?
Let's delay it a month.
Okay.
Everybody else okay with that too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We all good?
Yep.
Good.
All right. Moving forward. See everybody Thursday. Meeting adjourned.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
All right.